friends, welcome to one more video of CS Tech and Fun. In this video, we will see 10 essential communication acronyms for IT professionals, right? So these, first we will see what is the applicability, whom these terminologies are applicable to. These are generally applicable to freshers, right, or people who have just started with the IT career, maybe around 1 year to 2 years of experience, right? So who are yet to get accustomed to these terminologies, right? Then we will also see the acronyms itself. Then we'll also see some practical examples, and then finally we'll conclude. So to start with, first we have something called as MOM, which means minutes of meeting. What does minutes of meeting means? Generally, whenever you are in an IT company and you have some meetings, right? It could be your daily stand-up, which is also called as DSU, right? Or it could be some meeting with the client, right? So generally, what happens during these meetings, you would have to record the the pointers which are discussed, right, during the meetings. It could be some decisions, it could be some action items, right, so that you share it later with the entire team through an email, or maybe through Teams chat, right, or maybe through any of the communication mechanism that your company is using, so that the clear responsibility, the action items are very clear. The next thing is end of the day, which mean, and it is also sometimes called as end of business, right? When you say end of the day, it means that by end of the day you would require some task to be completed, or you might require some deadline to be achieved, right? So basically this is what it says, specifies a deadline by the end of the business hours, right? So one suggestion here, before whenever someone says end of the day, generally it means by the end of their business day, right? For example, if your work hours are from 9 to 5, right, so then it means that by 5 p.m. your task should be completed, right? If someone is starting in their second shift, or let's say UK shift, right, considering the Indian time zone, maybe if they're starting from, let's say, 11 to 7, right, so then by 7 p.m. the task should be completed, right? So this sets very clear priorities, in the sense that, for example, if I say that by tomorrow end of the day, right, it means that you have time till tomorrow so that you can plan your activities accordingly, right? That's what end of the day or end of business means. The next important thing is ETA, estimated time of arrival, right? So this is generally used to communicate the expected completion time, right? Or some, let's say, delivery time for a project, or something. For example, what is the ETA for this task, right? Which means that when are you going to when are you going to complete this task? In general, let's say even during the airlines, right? For example, you say that, oh, the ETA is estimated time of arrival is, let's say, 80 hours, right? Something like that, 800 hours. So similarly, in this case, you say that by when I'm going to, or some person is going to complete a specific task. So estimated time of arrival. The next very casual thing which we use is FII, which stands for your information. This generally is used in case of whenever you need to give some, let's say, information to a particular person, which is just good to have, right? Which means that, oh fine, see, I am doing this activity now, this is just for FYI, right? Generally you say that, okay fine, let's say you are assigning a particular task to some person, right? And then the other person, let's say your manager, is just FYI, right? Maybe he is in a CC, which means that it is just good to know for this particular person that so and so task or so and so mail communication has happened, right? This is FII. So now let's go to the next slide. And here we'll see some everyday acronyms, right? So this is something which you use very casually in day-to-day life, right? So for example, first is please find attached. So whenever you send an email, right, so what happens, you attach some files or something, or some other documents, right, or an image or whatever, right? In that case you mentioned that PFA, right? So please find attached, right, whenever you are sending some reports or images or any other references, right? It also is sometimes known as please find the attachment, right? So both can be used interchangeably, but generally PFA is very well known acronym. The next important thing is out of office. So out of office is basically a status, right? Which means that if you see your communicator or let's say Teams channel or something, right? You will have, let's say, available, right? Busy, right? And then maybe in meeting or in presentation. So there are different status. So one of the status is out of office. But when do you use out of office? You use out of office when basically you're not in office, you're on some leaves, right? You're on holiday. So what do? You set your out of office status message and then maybe you are on leave, right? You're not logged in. At the same time, this is also used during the communications. You can also say that I am out of office from, let's say, 17th October, right, till 25th October, right? So basically, you are telling that I am out of office during this duration. Fine. The next acronym is turnaround time. So what does it mean? It helps set realistic expectations for how quickly requests or tickets or tasks will be handled. For example, let's say there is person A, there is person B. You say that when person A is communicating to B, telling that see this is a task, and then that person B has to get back to person A. So what is the turnaround time for B to finish the task? Right, so that is called as turnaround time. This is generally this terminology is used mainly in case of ticket management system when you're raising a ticket, and then what is the turnaround time for the ticket completion, right? So those are the situations when it is used. So you can read here, these acronyms optimize information flow, promote accountability. What is accountability? You assign to a particular person and that person is accountable, is or that person should ensure that particular task is completed. And these are generally supported in agile, right? Agile way of work. Okay, let's go to the next slide to understand some project management acronyms. So these are generally used by project managers. Need not, it's not a compulsory thing so that they only should use it. But in general, right, whenever you're working as a team, so you could, let's say, plan to use it. Right. So the very first important thing is a SLA. What does SLA mean? Service level agreement. So I'll take an example, right? So for example, you're working for a service-based company, right? And then you have a client. So what happens now for that client? What you're asking is that, let's say if there is an issue raised, right? So I will address that issue within 10 days, 10 working days. So that is called as SLA, which means service level agreement. So which means that you have already agreed to do a particular task or certain set of tasks, right, within a specific amount of time or with a specific, let's say, resolution or with a specific quality. So that is what your service level agreement means. Now the next thing is roles and responsibilities. With the name itself it says, right, R and R. So roles and responsibility. For example, let's say there is a person with some 10 years of experience, right? So what are, so let's say he's going for an interview, and then the very standard question is that what are my R and R? What does it mean by R and R? Because different companies, right, will have, let's say, different roles, right? So for example, a 10-year experienced person can have a role of, let's say, a lead, right, or can have a role of an individual contributor. So basically, what is the expected out of that person? What are the responsibilities of that person, right? Whether he has to manage a team, whether he has to do the documentation, right? Whether what and all he is responsible for within the organization or within the team itself, right? So these are roles and responsibilities. The next thing is as soon as possible. This is a very standard thing which in general, let's say the current Gen Z team members, Gen Z folks also use, right? So ASAP means as soon as possible. If you have something to, let's say, where you are expecting some let's say report from someone, right, or some, or let's say if your manager is expecting you to finish a particular task, and or let's say he says that okay, or and then you ask that okay, by when should I finish this? Then that person says okay, I want it ASAP, which means that you leave all other work and then focus on this particular work because I need this as soon as possible. Okay, fine. So now let's see some practical examples of this. Okay, so the first one is with respect to MOM. So here is an example. I'll send the MOM by EOD, which means that, let's say if my managers ask me that, okay, fine, can you send me the minutes of meeting of the one, let's say XYZ meeting which we had, then you can say that I'll send the MOM by EOD, which means end of the day. right? Means the minutes of meeting will be shared with everyone before the end of the day, ensuring fast follow-up and clear accountability on task. Similarly, what's the ETA of bug of the bug fix? Means when is this particular bug is going to be fixed? Right? Estimated time of arrival means the bug will be fixed at specific time, and I want to know that time. If you want to understand more about the SDLC process, right? Because bug fix is part of let's say the maintenance or the support phase. Right? So if you want to know more about SDLC, here is the link, right? Which you can definitely refer, which kind of explains you the entire flow of SDLC in a structured manner with flow charts. So if you're new to IT field, or if you want to go, let's say, refresh your memories with respect to SDLC, please feel free to go to that video. Okay. The next one is our with respect to the TAT, turnaround time. So our onboarding TAT is 24 hours, right? Which means that, let's say, for a client system, or let's say client environment, if you have to onboard, what do you mean by onboard? Let's say if you need to access the client's ecosystem, right? So then you would need to be onboarded to their accounts. How do you do that? You will have to um, basically client is going to give access. Now what our statement is, our onboarding TAT is turnaround time is 24 hours, which means the time you are applying for the client to onboard, then the client is will tell that, okay, see boss, you would require 24 hours to onboard. Okay, fine. So the next examples is for a PFA. So it's very simple. Please find attached the updated design mockups, which means in the email you're going to write the statement so as to show that as there are some attachments. And nowadays an interesting item, right? So your Outlook will automatically detect, right, if you have mentioned PFA and if you have not attached any document, it will directly prompt you that, see boss, you have already mentioned PFA, but there is no attachments itself in the mail. That's a good feature. Okay, the next one is I am out of office until Wednesday, which means that you are informing your colleagues or your, of course, your colleagues or your manager, whoever, right? So you're letting them know that I am out of office until so and so day, or there is one other way where at the end of your email signature you say that upcoming leaves, right? So that also is one way to indicate what time you are going to be out of office. Okay, so this is out of office. The next thing is SLA, service level agreement. You say that our SLA requires response in 2 hours. In case you have an SLA with your client and then you have some bugs raised, I mean the client has raised some bugs, so then how do you recognize them, or let's say how do you ensure that particular bugs are addressed? Of course you will have some duration specified or agreed upon during your SLA, right? Or your in your SOW, which is statement of work, right? So in that case, you will say that, see, within 2 hours, I will be getting you back, right? So that's the about the SLA. Now let's conclude this particular session, right? And we'll see that why do acronyms are required, right? So in general, what happens? It boosts your professionalism and speed, right? You need not, especially see when you're typing something, right? It matters, right? Your number of words matters. If you have to quickly respond to someone, right? So regularly updating your acronym vocabulary ensures you stay confident and effective in collaborating in fast-changing environments. So, for example, you have seen so many acronyms today, right? So now if you want to, if you have come across some other acronym, right? So then please feel free to comment, right? So for example, there is something called as AFIK. So this is an interesting one. So please comment what is AFIK, right? Or as I also mentioned, there is something called as EOB, right? If you know more about it, wherever you have used it, please mention it in the comment. See, the next thing is stay current in IT communication. So there are new jargons which, let's say, keeps popping up, right? So for example, there is something called as NTD. What does that mean? Right? Then create a strong team culture. Using workplace acronym shows professionalism and helps avoid misunderstanding in IT business settings. Right? So you are very clear in your communication and communicate clearly for better results. So these are accurate, right? So this is what you would have to say. So that's where acronyms plays a very important role, right, in the IT world. So if you have watched this video so far, thanks for that. And then please like, share, subscribe, CS Tech and Fun, right? And please expect more such videos. And please share this with your friends. Thank you.